Hello, Alexandra here. This content is for folks interested in spiral dynamics or integral. And today's topic is, when is it time to leave a relationship? Specifically related to spiral dynamics or integral, what happens when one person is doing the work on themselves and has a trajectory, a growth trajectory, and is entering maybe a later stage, late teal, turquoise, and their friend or loved one is maybe not doing much inner work, and at orange or at green not doing inner work. And I say that because a lot of greens do inner work, they do heavy lifting, and they are on a growth trajectory, but not all stage greens. And so you have different worldviews, different value systems, and at some point there may not be a resonance, and someone progressing more towards a later stage may actually have much of their psyche, much of their way of operating in the world, much of their value system be a little bit to a lot invisible. And when I say leave a relationship, of course, there can simply be a continuum of that. One could totally leave or step back, or possibly even in your own mind just lightly demote friend to acquaintance. That might be a little more subtle. So how do we know? And this is incredibly, it's a sad topic, but let's turn it around and do something incredibly fun. I used the incredible artificial intelligence AI gigaglossary that Integral members have access to. If you're a member of Integral Life, you can search, sign in. I search Integral Life AI experiments and click on the gigaglossary. This is incredible. Let me read verbatim. So the question I asked was about being at a later stage and having very little in common now with sort of an earlier stage friend. And I've seen and talked to people that I know in integral groups who are actually thinking of leaving some friendships or relationships. And of course, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's no big deal, but it really depends on the situation. But let's get into this. This is really good. So let me start reading this, and I'm going to just pick pieces of this result and read it verbatim. Here we go. Quote, "At early turquoise, you feel the whole ecology of the friendship, the spoken words, the silent contexts. The relationship now appears like a living system whose feedback loops have stopped self-correcting. Shared meaning no longer regenerates, and attempts at resonance arrive as static. You notice that your friend's green pluralism often collapses into a relativistic swirl, while your own turquoise awareness tries to integrate, synthesize, and move on. Compassion remains, yet the shared we space feels threadbare. In this world space, it becomes obvious that a healthy friendship must serve both partners' growth trajectories. You detect subtle grief, the ache of dissolving a once beloved morphic field. The system insight that bonds can be honored even while the form of contact gracefully contracts or ends. You taste the sorrow of divergence, but also the relief of truth-telling. A quiet intuition whispers, when presence shrinks instead of expands, love asks for a different form. you rise knowing a compassionate closure conversation is not only permissible but evolutionary. Wow, that was an AI result. That was utterly beautiful, and that gives an idea of Turquoise valuing mutual growth and trajectory, and also sort of the flow and honoring of evolution that Turquoise has. Let me talk about what it says about green. Quote, green honors pluralism, so divergent worldviews are supposed to coexist. Losing the friendship seems like a betrayal of the principle. Yet, hidden beneath is an implicit request. Meet me where I am. Validate my reality. Without that resonance, the heart contracts and relational safety erodes. So, well said. Incredible. This AI is great. So with green, you noticed this explanation, quote, meet me where I am, validate my reality. What happens is green I've noticed can kind of go either way. When we go to spiral dynamics groups or integral groups, a lot of stage green folks are there, and those tend to be the stage green folks who are working on themselves, who are doing heavy lifting, who are on a growth trajectory, who enjoy reading about the stages, who are fascinated and excited by the stages. So these type of stage green folks tend to be insatiably curious, and they flow very well in integral groups and spiral dynamics groups, and they have lots of beautiful insights and tend to be, green can be a very verbal stage, so they can be very verbally dexterous and say things in insightful and beautiful ways. So, but what happens when not everybody at stage green does inner work or wants to do inner work or wants to evolve? There's no quote unquote law that says people have to evolve. Maybe they have another purpose in life. Maybe their purpose, maybe they'll stay at green their whole lives. Maybe they want nothing to do with the stages because it smells like hierarchy to them, and they want to be met where they are at. Again, I'll refer to the quote that the AI provided for green, quote, meet me where I am, validate my reality. Now, that is a different kind of dynamic between somebody at that place in their life and someone who might really be into the stages and really be on a growth trajectory and really be a later stage, and they can be frankly quite invisible in many ways. Here is what the AI says about an orange view. Quote, empirical studies show that friendship satisfaction is strongly predicted by value congruence, reciprocal self-disclosure, and frequency of positive affect. Attachment style research suggests that attempting continual repair when core motives differ can produce chronic allostatic load, subtle psychological stress accumulating over time. Healthy pruning of social networks, meanwhile, correlates with higher subjective well-being and cognitive complexity. Oh, I love that description for stage orange. I hope you find this fun. I am blown away by this Giga Glossary. What great responses this has. So here's a quote for how Teal might view ending a friendship. Quote, from this vantage, endings and beginnings lose tragic weight. What matters is clarity and interior alignment. Compassion still blooms, yet is no longer fused with obligation. And again, this AI result ends with a turquoise view. Quote, relationship, therefore, is not something to end or maintain. but a living mandala, continuously reconfiguring. Compassion and discernment intertwine. You honor the intrinsic dignity of every stage while recognizing that depth seeks fertile span. Allowing the form to dissolve is simply allowing spirit to recalibrate its own choreography. Words like goodbye transform into see you everywhere. Was that gorgeous or what? I am blown away by this. So, and of course, when considering to end a relationship, most of us who are interested in spiral dynamics and integral are well aware of parts work, and we always check in with ourselves first to make sure we're not in a trigger and that we're not overreacting. And we often take the pause and the thoughtful distance and taking our time to evaluate things. And also, by the way, this video is in my early Turquoise series, and I must mention that for folks who are entering Turquoise, this is a difficult entry point, and folks in this stage often feel existential angst and a little bit wobbly, and so they can tend to think ending a relationship will solve their problem, and it doesn't. The problem was the existential angst. So that's something else to look out for. But I hope you found this information useful. I sure did. Sending you love and blessings, and see you in the next video.